Put the gun down. Ain't your business.
Her father's breath came in wet, uneven bursts as he staggered in the doorway, the rifle wobbling in his hands. The girl stood frozen a few feet away, arms pulled tight to her chest, eyes locked on the dark metal pointing at her stomach. She whispered, barely able to get the words out, "Please don't." Her voice shook like it might break in half. The father swayed harder, boots scraping the floor as if he couldn't feel whether he was standing or falling. He muttered something she couldn't understand, only the slur of anger and liquor twisting his mouth. The rifle lifted another inch, trembling in his hands, and she shut her eyes, waiting for the sound that would end her. A quiet step touched the porch boards outside. Then another. Her father didn't hear it. He only blinked at the shape that filled the frame behind him when the outlaw stepped into the doorway, shadow cutting through the stale air. The outlaw's voice stayed low, flat, and cold. "Put the gun down." Her father jerked around, one shoulder dropping as he tried to steady the rifle between both directions. "Ain't your business," he growled, spit sliding from the corner of his mouth. The outlaw didn't blink. "It is now." For a long breath nothing moved. The girl felt the world tilt, the silence heavy enough to choke her. Her father's eyes narrowed as he tried to bring the barrel toward the outlaw. The outlaw stepped forward once, no hesitation, no noise except the soft press of his heel against the floor. Her father dragged in a breath and swung the rifle clumsily. The outlaw moved first. 2 quick motions, almost too fast to follow. His hand seized the barrel. His other palm slammed against the stock. The rifle ripped from the father's grip before he could understand it was gone. The girl gasped. Her father cursed, stumbling back, hands clawing at the empty air as if the weapon were still there. The outlaw held the rifle pointed downward, but the tension in the room snapped like a rope stretched too far. Her father spit toward the outlaw's boots. "You think you're some damn hero?" His voice cracked around the words. The outlaw didn't answer. He stood calm, eyes fixed on the man in front of him, breathing steady while her father's chest heaved. The girl felt the air shift, like the outlaw had brought a storm inside with him. Her father lunged forward, but his foot caught on the edge of a loose board. His body pitched and he crashed to the floor, palms slapping the wood. The outlaw didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't even shift his grip on the rifle. Her father groaned and rolled onto his back, staring up at the ceiling like the world had betrayed him. The girl didn't know if she could breathe yet. The outlaw raised the rifle slowly, holding it by the barrel, letting the weight of it hang between them. Her father tried to push himself up again, but only managed an elbow beneath him. The outlaw stepped back toward the doorway, a quiet shadow against the dim room. The girl watched him like he was something unreal, something she had imagined but somehow stepped into life. Her father's hand clawed at the floor, dragging himself upright. And that is exactly where the next chapter begins. Her father pushed himself up from the floor, breath dragging through his teeth as if every movement cut him open. Dust clung to his palms. His face twisted when he saw the outlaw still holding the rifle by the barrel. A low growl built in his throat as he reached toward the table behind him, fingers fumbling for the knife tucked near the edge. The girl felt her chest tighten. She stepped back, but the outlaw only shifted his stance, weight moving to one heel as if he had expected this from the start. When the father's fingers curled around the knife handle, the outlaw's voice cut through the room, short and sharp. "Don't!" Her father froze, the blade barely lifted. He spat a breath out through his nose. "Who the hell are you?" His voice shook, but the anger stayed thick. The outlaw didn't blink. "No name you need." The words hung in the air like a door slamming shut. The father's jaw twitched, and he lifted the knife another inch. The outlaw didn't move. His stillness did more than any threat could have. The father's gaze flicked to the girl, then back to the outlaw's expressionless face. Something in him faltered. He dropped the knife onto the table with a dull thud. Silence pressed in. The girl swallowed, her throat tight. She forced out a whisper. "Thank you." Her voice barely reached him. The outlaw didn't look her way. "Don't thank me." His tone was flat, almost colder than before, as if gratitude stung worse than the danger. Her father scoffed, wiping spit from his lip. You think she needs your saving? She's mine to discipline. The girl flinched, and the outlaw finally glanced at her father with a steady, unreadable stare. Stand up, he said, not loud but solid. Her father muttered something, but the outlaw stepped closer until the man winced and rose unsteadily. The outlaw lifted the rifle by the barrel and shoved it into the father's chest. The man grabbed it awkwardly, confused. The outlaw nodded toward the door. Outside. Her father hesitated, eyes darting between the girl and the outlaw, but the outlaw didn't repeat himself. With a bitter curse, the father stumbled toward the doorway. The outlaw followed, keeping just close enough that the man could feel the presence behind him. Outside, the cool air hit hard. Her father blinked against it, drunken body swaying. The outlaw pointed to a patch of dirt near the steps. Sit. Sober up before you touch her again. Her father bristled. You don't tell me. The outlaw took half a step forward. Her father's voice cracked off, dying in his throat. He lowered himself to the dirt with clumsy hands. The girl stood inside the doorway, watching the scene like she wasn't sure it was real. The outlaw turned slightly, eyes meeting hers for the first time since the struggle ended. She stepped out onto the porch boards, her voice soft. Why did you help me? The outlaw looked past her for a moment, jaw tightening. You looked scared. She swallowed. I was. The outlaw nodded once, as if that was the end of the conversation. He stepped off the porch, boots hitting the ground with steady weight. Her father glared up at him from the dirt, but said nothing. The girl watched the outlaw walk away, his shoulders tense, his pace measured. Something pulled her forward before she understood it. Her feet moved on their own, stepping off the porch and following the man into the dim stretch beyond the yard. The door creaked behind her as it swung half shut, the house already fading from her mind. The morning sun climbed over the ridge like a slow-burning promise, brushing gold across the fields. But inside Clara's chest, the night's unease hadn't burned away at all. Not after what she'd heard. The stranger's screams still echoed in her mind, raw, agonized, torn from a place deeper than nightmares. Part of her wanted to shake him awake, force the truth from him. The other part feared what that truth might be. She found him outside before breakfast, stacking chopped wood with a precision too calm for a man who had woken the whole ranch in terror. He glanced up as she approached. Mornin', ma'am. No apology. No explanation. No fear that she might send him away. Only steady eyes, too steady. Clara folded her arms. About last night. He paused, placing the last log down gently. I figure I owe you an apology. That'd be a start. He nodded once. Didn't mean to trouble nobody. Won't happen again. She studied him. Those weren't the sounds of a man having a bad dream. You were fighting something. He didn't flinch. Sometimes memories bite harder than a rattler. There was a silence, heavy, awkward, but not empty. She sensed he wanted to speak more but held the words back. A wall built brick by brick. Clara. Ben's voice came from the barn. You gotta see this. She motioned for the stranger to follow. Inside the barn, Ben pointed at a section of the wooden wall near the rear stall. Clara's heartbeat quickened. Claw marks. Deep ones. Fresh. But not from an animal. No steer hoof or horse kick made marks like these. They looked human. The stranger's jaw tightened. Clara turned sharply. Did you do this? He didn't answer immediately. He walked closer, pressing his fingers into one of the grooves. His hand fit. Too well. Ben stepped back. Lady, I told you we shouldn't have kept him. He's trouble. Clara shot him a hard look. Ben, that's enough. But doubt flickered inside her. The stranger straightened. I didn't mean no harm. Had a panic spell, is all. That strong? Ben muttered. The stranger lifted his eyes, dark, unreadable, but carrying a strange sorrow. You spend enough nights running from your own head, you'd be surprised what you do in your sleep. Clara's heartbeat softened just a little. Not trust, but understanding. She spoke carefully. If you want to stay another night, I need honesty. Are you dangerous? He held her gaze for a long, waited moment. I don't aim to be, he said finally. But something's after me. Or maybe I'm after it. A cold ripple crawled down Clara's spine. After what? He shook his head. I ain't sure. Faces. Voices. A fire. Men shouting. I run. I keep running. And every time I think I'm clear, it catches up. Ben whispered, this is insane. But Clara heard something else, fear wrapped in regret. Tell me your name, she said softly. He hesitated, as if reaching through fog. Elias, he said at last. But that's all I know for certain. The barn fell silent. Outside, a lone hawk circled. Wind carried dust across the yard. Clara didn't know if she'd just invited danger into her home, or stumbled onto a man whose past was deadly enough to kill him if she didn't protect him. And for reasons she couldn't explain, she wasn't ready to send him away. The day had barely settled into its noon heat when Clara spotted a dust cloud rising from the long road leading to the ranch. From the widow's walk above her porch, she narrowed her eyes, hand shading her brow. A rider. Fast. Purposeful. Ben came out of the barn, wiping grease off his hands. That ain't one of ours. Clara's stomach tightened. Nothing good ever came from a rider who didn't slow down. Elias, repairing a broken fence rail, stood still as stone. His face changed, just a flicker, but enough for Clara to notice. His shoulders locked, his jaw tightened, recognition, maybe even fear. The horse slid to a hard stop in front of the ranch house. Sheriff Vaughn swung down, dusting off his coat, his eyes sharp as the badges pinned to his chest. Mrs. Harper, he greeted. Ben. Then, colder, stranger. Clara stepped off the porch. Sheriff, to what do we owe the pleasure? Vaughn removed his hat, though his tone held no courtesy. Heard y'all hired a drifter yesterday. Large fella. Dark hair. Bruised up. Wandering alone. Ben gestured instantly at Elias. That's him. Elias didn't move. Didn't twitch a muscle. Clara felt her heart thud against her ribs. The sheriff approached Elias slowly, circling him like a wolf testing the strength of a fence. What's your name, son? Elias answered flatly. Elias. Surname? A beat. A silence that dragged too long. Don't remember, Elias said. Vaughn's eyes darkened. Convenient. Clara stepped forward. Sheriff, he's been nothing but respectful. He works hard, keeps to himself. Vaughn barely looked at her. Respectful men don't forget their own names. Clara stiffened. Some men have been through things that would make anyone forget. Elias glanced at her, not gratitude exactly, but something gentler, something human. Vaughn hooked his thumbs into his belt. 2 nights ago, there was a fire up north. Old Miller homestead. Went up like dry pine. He paused. 2 bodies recovered. Clara swallowed hard. Ben's eyes widened. Elias stared into the dirt. Tracks suggested someone fled the scene, Vaughn continued. Big footsteps. Similar to his. Elias finally spoke. Sheriff, I didn't burn nobody's home. You saying that now, Vaughn drawled, but every outlaw says that when he's caught with soot on his hands. Clara snapped, he came here bruised and half-conscious. You think a murderer would run into the open plains and ask for ranch work? Desperate men make foolish choices, Vaughn shot back. Tension coiled like a rattler ready to strike. The sheriff stepped closer to Elias, too close. You scream in your sleep, boy? Clara froze. Ben stiffened. Elias didn't answer. Vaughn smirked. I heard stories. A man who wakes the dead with nightmares. A man seen wandering the ridge past midnight talking to ghosts. Clara's breath caught. Someone saw? But Elias remained still, unreadable. Until I know who you are, Vaughn said, you stay off the roads. Don't leave this ranch. And if you remember anything, you tell me first. Understand? Elias met his stare. I understand. Vaughn mounted up. Keep your eyes open, Mrs. Harper. Strays bring wolves. As the sheriff galloped off, dust swirling in his wake, Clara felt the weight of a choice she hadn't realized she'd already made. She was going to protect this man. Even if she didn't know why. The bunkhouse door creaked louder than the hinges deserved, echoing in the small, empty space. Dust floated in the light that slipped through the slats, catching on the girl's sleeves as she stepped inside. She paused, as if afraid even her breathing might disturb something. The room was nothing, one cot, one chair, the dark outline of an old stove too rusted to remember fire. But to her, it was sanctuary. It's small, the outlaw muttered behind her. She shook her head. It's mine. He wasn't sure why those two words unsettled him more than any gun he'd ever faced. She set her bag on the cot, really just a bundle of fabric tied with frayed rope, then turned slowly, taking in the shadows, the smell of cedar and neglect. He watched her fingers trace the wooden wall as if she were memorizing every inch. Then it happened. A small sound, barely a breath at first. A soft rush of air that almost didn't belong in a place like this. A laugh. He stiffened. She covered her mouth immediately, embarrassed. Sorry. It just feels strange. To be somewhere quiet. No need to apologize, he said, though his voice came out rougher than he meant. She glanced at him, brow crinkled. Are you all right? He looked away. Fine. You look scared. That made him glance back at her. Her eyes were wide, not mocking, not bold, just curious. Genuinely curious. And something in him pulled taut. I am, he admitted. She blinked, surprised. He wasn't sure what possessed him to say it. The truth usually lived buried deep under dirt and miles and years of silence. But the moment the words left him, he didn't regret them. She stepped closer, small boots silent on the worn floorboards. Of me? No. A beat. Of what happens next. She nodded slowly, as if she understood more than she should. I don't know what happens next either. The wind pushed against the bunkhouse walls then, a long moan that made the place shiver. She sat on the cot, folding her hands in her lap, her shoulders loosening for the first time since he'd met her. Her smile returned, faint, soft, fragile. But real. It hit him harder than her father's rifle ever could have. She smoothed the blanket at her side. Thank you, for coming back for me. He leaned against the doorframe, because if he didn't, he wasn't sure his legs would hold steady. Didn't plan to. I know. Silence filled the small room, but it wasn't sharp or heavy this time. It settled like dust on sunlight. Get some rest, he said finally. I'll be close by. She looked up. In case he comes? In case anyone comes. That earned him her third smile, barely there, but enough. Outside, the night pressed closer, but inside the bunkhouse, for the first time, she wasn't trembling. And for the first time, he was. The girl's faint smile lingered long after her eyes drifted toward the dusty floor. The outlaw stayed in the doorway, one shoulder pressed against the frame, trying not to show how unsteady he felt inside. The bunkhouse was small enough that every exhale seemed to push against his ribs. You don't have to stand there, she said softly. I'm fine. She tilted her head. You keep saying that. He didn't answer. The quiet stretched, thin, uneasy. Not dangerous. Not yet. But fragile, like something breathing under the floorboards. Finally she looked up. Do you always walk into trouble like that? Just straight in? Depends. On what? If someone needs me to. Her lips twitched, not quite a smile, but something like it. No one ever needed you before? Not in a long time. She nodded as if that made perfect sense. I needed you tonight. He looked down at his boots. I know. The silence settled again, but this time it pressed on him differently, closer, warmer, harder to escape. He cleared his throat. You should sleep. I don't think I can. Why? She didn't look at him when she answered. Because the quiet feels wrong. He understood that in a way he wished he didn't. He stepped inside, slow, deliberate, testing the boards. They creaked under his weight. She didn't flinch, just watched him with those wide, bruised eyes that made him feel like she could see more than she should. He sat on the chair, turning it slightly toward the door. Get used to it. Quiet doesn't bite. It does when you grew up listening for footsteps. He met her gaze, sharp, sudden, surprised. She didn't blink. He breathed once. You listen for mine now. Her throat tightened. Are you staying all night? If that's what it takes. She pulled her knees up onto the cot, hugging them close. It might take a long time. He nodded, adjusting the brim of his hat low. Then I'm here a long time. Her breath hitched, and for a moment he wasn't sure if she'd cry or smile or break in half. Instead, she whispered. No one's ever stayed. I ain't no one. That pulled a small, trembling laugh out of her. You really won't tell me your name? No. Why not? It's safer. For who? She asked. He didn't answer. Her fingers fidgeted with the loose thread on the blanket, pulling, twisting. You can make one up, she said. Something short. He shook his head. Names stick. I don't need another one sticking. She studied him, eyes narrowing with quiet interest. Then I'll give you one. You don't need. Ghost, she said, before he could stop her. He exhaled sharply. Why that? Because you showed up out of nowhere. And you look like you're carrying things no one can see. He stared at her for a long moment. Ghost, huh? Unless you want something else? No, he murmured. Ghost'll do. She smiled, not the soft, frightened smile from before, but something steadier. Something braver. He shifted on the chair, uncomfortable in a way he couldn't explain. You hungry? She shook her head. I'm tired. Then sleep. I will. A beat. You'll wake me if something happens? I won't need to wake you. Nothing's happening tonight. She let out a breath, trusting him more than she had any reason to. Thank you. Ghost. He didn't respond. Couldn't. The word hit him somewhere old and sore. Her eyes finally closed, lashes brushing her cheeks. Within minutes, her breathing softened. But the outlaw didn't look away. And the quiet she feared? It didn't last. A twig snapped outside. Very light. Very deliberate. The outlaw's hand dropped to his gun. And the night leaned in. The girl woke first to the sound of boots in gravel, fast, uneven, too many. Lantern light flickered across the cracks in the bunkhouse wall, swaying like drunken ghosts. She sat up on the cot, breath snagged in her throat. The outlaw was at the door before she could speak. Stay behind me, he said, voice low, steady. What's happening? He didn't answer. The silence outside did. Low voices. Men. More than two. The scrape of metal. The father's slurred growl rising above the rest. She pressed herself behind him as he pushed the door open a crack. Lanterns floated in the dark, held by 5 shadowed figures. Her father stood in front, swaying like his bones had forgotten their job. His face was red, eyes watery, rage boiling through the alcohol. There she is, he spat. My girl. The outlaw stepped out onto the porch, blocking the doorway with his body. You dragged half the night's trash with you, he said.
Go home.
Her father stumbled forward, raising a shaking finger.
She's mine. She ain't property. She's my blood. Not yours. Not nobody's but mine.
You lost the right to claim anyone when you pointed a gun at her. Her father's jaw twisted, teeth grinding like he wanted to bite through words. The men behind him shifted their weight, unsure, caught between loyalty and the outlaw's shadow.
You think you can take her? The father snarled. You think you can stand here and tell me what's mine? The outlaw didn't blink. She's safe here. You aren't crossing this porch. The girl pressed her palm against the outlaw's back, fingers trembling.
He didn't look at her, but she felt him steady under her touch.
Her father barked a laugh that cracked in the middle. Look at that. She's hiding behind you like some scared pup. The outlaw answered with a flat tone that cut through the air. She's scared of you. That hit something. The father staggered forward, anger flaring. Get out of my damn way. No. The word hung like a blade. One of the men whispered, maybe we should head back, Eli. This ain't.
You hush, the father snapped, thrusting his lantern forward.
She's comin' home with me.
The outlaw lifted his gun, not at a man, but at the sky, and fired a single shot.
The explosion shattered the night. Lanterns jolted. Boots skidded.
The men scrambled back, curses flying.
One dropped his lantern entirely, sparks skittering across dirt. All except the father. He didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just narrowed his bloodshot eyes at the outlaw.
You think that scares me? He hissed. No, the outlaw said.
But the next one won't be a warning.
You'll die for this, the father whispered, the words soaked in rage deeper than whiskey.
You hear me? You'll die for talking her. The girl's breath hitched. The outlaw didn't react. You done? He asked.
The father stepped back, lantern shaking. The other men waited, unsure if he'd lunge again or collapse. He swayed, spit into the dirt, and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand.
This ain't over, he muttered. Next time I won't be drunk. The outlaw didn't speak. Didn't move.
Just watched as the father turned and staggered away, the other men following like shadows too tired to keep shape. When the last lantern disappeared into the dark, the girl let her breath fall out in a shudder. He'll come back, she whispered.
I know, the outlaw said. The bunkhouse door closed behind them, the night holding its breath until morning.
He sat alone outside the bunkhouse, elbows on his knees, head bowed like the night itself was pressing down on him. The girl watched from the doorway, unsure if stepping closer would break him or steady him. The lantern inside flickered against his back, carving him into sharp lines and long shadows.
He hadn't spoken since her father left.
He hadn't moved either, except for one small thing. His hand kept opening and closing, slow and tight, as if something old inside him was trying to crawl out. She stepped onto the porch.
Can I sit?
He didn't answer, but he didn't send her away. She eased down beside him, pulling her knees up to her chest. The night smelled of dust and fear. For a long stretch, neither of them spoke. She could hear his breathing, slow, controlled, almost painful. Finally she whispered, "Who was she?" His jaw tensed, the muscles jumping.
He didn't look at her. Someone I couldn't save. She waited. He didn't continue.
The silence grew heavy, but not empty. She could feel him fighting himself. "You don't have to tell me," she said. "She was my sister." His voice was flat.
Too flat. Like he'd peeled emotion off each word before letting it go. Younger than me. Too trusting. Too kind.
Her fingers curled in her lap. "She followed me once," he continued.
Like you did tonight. He let out a slow breath.
"I told her to stay behind."
She didn't.
He swallowed hard, throat clicking. "A man took her.
Someone powerful.
Someone nobody in town dared cross. I tried to get her back." His voice lowered.
"I wasn't fast enough."
The girl hugged her knees tighter. They blamed me, he said. Said I should have watched her better. Should have fought harder. Should have done more. His voice cracked on the last word, the first fracture she'd heard from him. And did you? She asked softly. Every day. His shoulders sagged. But it wasn't enough. She inched closer, their arms almost touching. I'm sorry. He didn't respond, but she saw his eyes shift, a flicker of something breaking loose inside him. That's why you helped me, she said. Isn't it? He stared straight ahead. I wasn't gonna watch another girl die because a man wanted to feel big. She blinked back a tear she hadn't expected. I thought, maybe you stepped in because you're good. I'm not good, he said. Just tired of ghosts. A soft breeze stirred the dirt, lifting cold air around them. The girl let her hand fall gently against his arm. He didn't pull away. He didn't stiffen. He just breathed out, long and slow, like something inside him finally had space to move. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For trying, she said. For still trying. He turned his head slightly, not enough to meet her eyes, but enough for her to see the truth leaning toward her. She rested her head against his shoulder. He didn't move. He didn't breathe for a moment. Then he let himself lean the smallest bit toward her, just enough for the night to hold them both. Transition, dawn would find them like that, quiet, heavy, connected. Dawn came in slow, bruised colors, the kind that made everything look half awake and half afraid. The outlaw rose from the chair outside the bunkhouse, careful not to wake the girl still sleeping on the cot. She'd slid down sometime in the night, her head on his shoulder, and he'd stayed completely still until her breathing evened out again. Now he stepped outside, rubbing a hand over his face. The horizon stretched pale and empty until a distant thud of hooves began pounding through the morning quiet. He straightened. The rider came fast, kicking up dirt in a long trail behind him. The horse was lathered, the rider slumped low, like he'd been sent without sleep. The outlaw's shoulders tensed as the horse slowed, and the stranger pulled up short, panting hard. You the one they're looking for? The rider asked. The outlaw didn't answer. The man reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed envelope. Heavy wax. A symbol he recognized instantly, the mark of the governor's office. He felt cold settle in his gut. Order came down last night, the rider said. Wanted it delivered before sunrise. He flicked the reins, ready to leave. I don't want no part of what comes next. Then he turned the horse and disappeared the way he'd come, as if afraid the outlaw's shadow might reach him too. The outlaw stared at the seal. For a long moment, he didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then the bunkhouse door creaked behind him. The girl stepped out, rubbing her eyes. What's that? Nothing, you need to. She was beside him before he finished, her hand brushing the envelope. Is it about my father? No, his voice came out low. Worse. She held out her hand. Let me see. He hesitated, but only for a second, then placed it in her palm. Her fingers slid under the wax, breaking the seal. A single sheet fell open. Her eyes scanned it quickly. When she reached the end, her breath hitched. It says, if you're seen within this region, you're to be shot. On sight. He nodded once. She swallowed. Why? The outlaw stepped back, jaw clenching. I crossed the wrong family. That doesn't explain anything. It explains enough. No, it doesn't. Her voice sharpened, trembling. Tell me. He looked away toward the distant tree line. The governor's kin, they were part of the same crew that took my sister. I went after them. Put one in the ground. Put another close. Governor didn't forgive. The girl's fingers tightened around the paper. So this is revenge. It's politics, he said. Same thing. She shook her head, taking a step toward him. They'll come here. They'll send men. I know. She stared at him, realizing something. You're leaving.
He didn't deny it. No, her voice cracked. You can't just go. If I stay, they'll drag you into it. You'll be used as leverage. Or worse. No, she whispered again. If you leave, he wins. My father wins. The governor wins. Everyone who hurts people gets exactly what they want. Girl. I'm not a girl, she said, voice rising. Not anymore. He looked at her fully, then eyes raw, jaw set, shoulders knotted with years of running. She didn't flinch. I won't let you get shot, he said. And I won't let you run. Her hand reached for his coat. Not from them. Not from me. He felt her grip, small but fierce, and something inside him buckled. She wasn't begging. She wasn't clinging. She was standing. He'd seen people cling. Seen them beg. He'd never seen someone stand for him. A horse screamed somewhere far away, echoing across the fields. He exhaled slowly. If I stay, everything changes. Good, she whispered. I'm tired of things staying the same. The outlaw looked at her hand, curled around his coat like an anchor. Then he looked at the horizon where the rider had vanished. Finally he spoke. All right. Her breath caught. All right? I'll stay, he said. But staying means fighting. She nodded, eyes steady. Then I'll fight too. The outlaw swallowed once, hard, and didn't pull away. Transition, her hand was still gripping his coat when the morning fully broke, binding them to whatever came next. The sun was dropping behind the ridge when Clara noticed the dust trail on the road, a slow-moving horse, steady, deliberate. Not a drifter. Not a ranch hand. Someone with purpose. Miles stepped out from the barn just as she did from the porch. They exchanged a look, one that asked 100 questions without a single word. The rider drew closer. A badge glinted. Sheriff Dalton Hayes. Clara's stomach tightened. Dalton wasn't the kind of lawman who made social calls. He was the kind who showed up after storms, physical or human, left wreckage behind. The sheriff reined in his horse near the porch. He removed his hat, running a hand through white-streaked hair. Evenin', Clara. Miles. His voice carried that careful neutrality lawmen used when they didn't want to reveal what they already knew. Miles moved a little closer to Clara. Protective. Subtle, but Dalton noticed. Clara saw his eyes flick between them. Sheriff, Clara said, keeping her voice steady. What brings you out here? Dalton sighed, shifting in the saddle. Got word that Judd Turner was found last night outside Ridgetown. Badly beaten. Real bad. Clara felt Miles stiffen beside her. Every muscle in his back turned to stone. The sheriff's gaze locked on him. I heard he paid you a visit earlier that day. Miles didn't move. He did. And then you followed after him. Not an accusation. Just fact laid out on dry dirt. Clara stepped forward. Sheriff, are you saying Miles did something? Because Judd Turner has been tormenting folks in this valley for years. Dalton held up a hand. I didn't say Miles did or didn't. I'm just telling you what folks are whisperin'. Ridgetown ain't exactly a peaceful place right now. Miles met the sheriff's eyes. If I'd wanted Judd dead, Sheriff, I promise you he wouldn't be in a hospital bed. But I didn't lay a hand on him. Dalton studied him long, hard. He wasn't an easy man to fool, nor was he a man who enjoyed being uncertain. Finally, he exhaled. Truth is, I believe you. Clara's knees nearly gave out with relief. But, Dalton continued, believing you don't keep folks from talkin'. Judd's brothers are riled up. They're saying this valley owes them blood. And blood's what they're comin' for. Clara swallowed. Are we in danger? Dalton hesitated. For the first time, the sure-footed sheriff looked troubled. Clara. Judd's family blames your ranch for every misfortune they've had. Your husband denying them grazing rights.
Your late father refusing them water during the drought.
He paused. And now? They're claiming Miles crippled their kin.
Clara felt cold seep into her bones.
Miles stepped forward, jaw tight.
What are you here to tell us, Sheriff?
Dalton's horse shifted under him as if sensing the tension.
The sheriff adjusted the reins, then looked up with a grim expression.
I'm here to warn you both.
Turner men were seen riding out this morning armed.
Asking questions. Not the kind you answer with words. A hawk screeched overhead, circling the quiet ranch. Dalton placed his hat back on. Lock your doors. Keep your rifles close.
And Miles. His gaze sharpened.
You might want to stay near Clara. Folks say trouble follows you. I'd say it's about to knock right on her door.
With that, he tapped his horse and rode off, leaving the warning hanging in the cooling evening air.
Miles watched until the sheriff disappeared over the ridge.
Clara turned to him, voice barely above a whisper.
What do we do now? Miles didn't answer right away.
His eyes scanned the horizon, the barn, the tree line.
Every shadow looked like an enemy. Finally, he said quietly, we get ready. Because whatever's comin', it ain't gonna wait for sunrise.
Night settled over the valley like a burial shroud. The ranch was quiet, too quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath.
Clara walked through the house room by room, placing lanterns near windows, checking locks twice, sometimes 3 times.
Every creak of the floorboards made her flinch. Miles followed behind her silently, watching corners, shadows, horizons through glass panes as if expecting the Turner brothers to materialize at any second.
Finally, Clara turned to him.
This is my home, she whispered.
I won't be chased off it. Miles's jaw tightened. Nobody's chasing you off anything. He paused.
But you need to understand, men like the Turners don't know the meaning of restraint. They pick a target and they hunt. Clara wrapped her arms around herself, trying to keep her breath steady.
I'm not afraid of them. Miles stepped closer, voice lower. You should be.
The honesty in his words scared her more than the threat itself. But before she could answer, a faint clatter echoed outside, a loose board on the barn, maybe.
Or something else.
Miles moved instantly, crossing the room and grabbing the rifle leaning near the door.
He signaled Clara to stay back.
She followed anyway, keeping behind him as he moved onto the porch. The moon lit the yard in pale silver.
The barn doors creaked on their hinges, swaying slightly in the cool wind. Clara whispered, "Do you see anything?" Miles didn't answer.
He stepped down from the porch, boots silent in the dirt. He approached the barn with measured steps, rifle raised. Clara's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her fingertips. Miles reached the door and pulled it open.
Darkness. Then, a shape darted out from behind a hay bale. Clara gasped. Miles swung the rifle, ready to fire. But stopped just in time.
A small goat burst past him and scampered into the yard, bleating indignantly.
Clara exhaled in a shaky laugh. Daisy, you nearly got yourself killed.
Miles lowered the rifle, shaking his head.
She must have slipped out the pen. He approached Clara, voice softer now. False alarms are how you lose your nerve. Don't let em. She looked up at him. How are you so calm?
He hesitated, and for the first time since she'd known him, she saw something vulnerable in his eyes. I ain't calm, he admitted.
I just know what fear does to people.
And I know what happens when you let it take control. His gaze drifted toward the dark hills.
I've seen good men die that way. Clara felt the weight of those words.
Before she could respond, thunder rumbled, not from the sky, but from the earth.
Hoofbeats. Miles stiffened. That's not Daisy.
They moved to the edge of the porch, eyes fixed on the distant ridge. A line of dim lanterns bobbed slowly over the hill like a serpent of fire.
The soft glow grew brighter. Closer. Clara clasped Miles's arm. Is it them? Miles didn't blink. Turners don't ride in a line unless they're making a statement.
The lanterns descended into the valley, weaving down the slope toward the ranch.
Miles pulled Clara closer to the door.
I need you inside, he said.
I'm not hiding. This isn't hiding. This is surviving.
Clara hesitated, but only for a moment.
She stepped back into the doorway, hands trembling.
Miles remained outside, rifle across his chest, eyes cold steel as the first silhouettes appeared through the moonlit haze. He whispered without turning.
No matter what happens, Clara, don't open that door unless it's my voice calling you. The lanterns spilled fully into view. A dozen riders. Guns on their hips. Turner men. Clara felt the blood drain from her face.
And then, from somewhere in the shadows of the riders, a voice called out across the yard.
Miles Carter. Come on out, boy. We got unfinished business. Miles tightened his grip on the rifle.
And the night held its breath once more. The Turner riders fanned out across the yard, horses stamping, lanterns swaying like restless spirits. Their shadows stretched long across the dirt, reaching toward the porch where Miles stood alone.
Clara's fingers clutched the inside doorknob.
She couldn't see Miles's face anymore, just the straight set of his shoulders. The lead rider, a broad man with a mangled ear and a voice like gravel, urged his horse forward.
Miles Carter, he called again.
Didn't think you'd crawl back into this part of the world.
Miles didn't lift the rifle, didn't flinch. Didn't come here for you.
The Turner man laughed, a deep, ugly sound.
That's the problem with you. Always actin' like trouble ain't following you.
When really, he gestured at the men behind him.
Here we are. Clara swallowed hard.
Another rider pushed up beside the leader, younger, meaner, eyes sharp like broken glass. You got something that belongs to us, he said.
Miles's voice stayed flat. Don't recall talking anything from cowards. A ripple went through the group. Saddles creaked.
A few riders shifted hands to gun belts. The younger Turner grinned slowly.
We ain't talking about objects.
Clara's heart thumped painfully.
They're talking about me. Miles shifted his weight, subtle but deliberate, shielding the doorway behind him.
You'll leave now, he said quietly, or you'll be carried out. The leader raised a palm, halting his men. He leaned forward, studying Miles like he was some wild thing behind glass. Always figured you'd die young, he said.
But I reckon you're smarter than that. So let's talk sense.
He pointed toward the house with two thick fingers.
The girl. Send her out. We ride away. Miles didn't move.
Inside, Clara felt every muscle go rigid. The leader continued, almost bored.
Ain't gonna repeat myself.
The sheriff wants her for questioning.
We just happen to be the ones bringing her in. Miles's eyes chilled. You expect me to believe the sheriff sent you? Another ugly laugh. He don't need to send us.
We do what's good for the valley. Like keeping folk from sheltering criminals.
Clara stiffened. Criminals?
The younger Turner added, girl was seen helping that drunk father of hers run off supplies he owed on.
Theft. Evasion. Lotta ugly words floatin' in town. Clara whispered, that's not true.
Miles heard her. His jaw clenched.
He raised the rifle a fraction.
You boys are terrible liars. The leader sighed, annoyed. I'm giving you a chance to save your own hide, Carter. Don't make me turn this place into a graveyard. Silence stretched. The horses snorted. The lanterns flickered.
Clara's breath came shallow and fast. Miles finally spoke, voice low as a knife sliding from its sheath. She's not going anywhere.
The riders bristled. The younger Turner spat into the dirt. Then we take her after we kill you.
Miles lowered into a firing stance.
Clara's whole body tightened, she wanted to scream at him, pull him back inside, anything, but her feet were frozen. Then the unexpected happened. The leader raised his hand again. Hold. Every horse went still.
Every man stopped breathing. He studied Miles, expression turning thoughtful. Miles, this ain't like you. You know we outnumber you. But you're standin' there like you expect to live through this. Miles didn't blink. Maybe I do. Aha. The leader smirked. Then there must be something real special about that girl. Clara felt heat rise to her face even in terror. Mouse quiet, the leader turned his horse. We'll come back at first light. You got till then to be smart. The riders wheeled around, lantern swinging, hooves thundering back toward the ridge. The valley swallowed them. Miles let out a slow, controlled breath. Clara opened the door a crack. They'll kill you, Miles. He turned to her, eyes still hard from the confrontation, but when he looked at her, something gentler flickered through. They'll have to get through me first. She stepped out onto the porch, voice trembling. Why? Why would you risk your life for me? Miles looked out into the darkness where the riders had gone. Because, he said softly, almost ashamed. You're the first person in a long time who made me want to stand for something again. The knight seemed to lean in close, listening. Clara did too. The ridge was still trembling from the Turner riders when Clara touched Miles's arm. He didn't turn. His breath was sharp, uneven, as if the threat still pressed against his ribs. They'll be back, she whispered. I know. He finally looked at her. But something had changed in him since the lantern light, something settled. He wasn't shaking. He wasn't second-guessing. He was choosing. Come inside, Clara said. Please. Miles nodded once and followed her in. The next morning. No words were spoken over breakfast. Not by Miles. Not by Clara. But the world outside roared with them. By midday, whispers were already trickling from town to the ranch, thin, poisonous streams carried by travelers, ranch hands, gossiping women at the mercantile. That outlaw's taken her in. He pulled a rifle on the Turner clan. Girl's father's Callan for blood. Sheriff's in a bind, governor still wants Miles Carter dead. Every rumor hit the valley like a hammer. Clara overheard 2 ranch hands near the barn. Sheriff can't protect them both. He won't try. You think the outlaw's a fool? Maybe. Or maybe he's in love. Clara froze. Then walked away fast, heart thudding. Father returns alone. Near sundown, Clara's father limped up the road toward the bunkhouse, sober for once, eyes raw and bloodshot. Miles saw him first, stepping onto the porch with a quiet, controlled fury. Keep your hands where I can see 'em, Miles said. Her father snorted. Ain't here to fight. Don't care. Keep 'em up. The man complied, slow, mocking. Clara stepped between them. Just say what you came to say. Her father's lip curled. Town's talkin'. Says you're livin' with this, he jabbed a finger at Miles. This outlaw trash. Says he's claiming you. That's not how it is, Clara muttered. He barked a laugh. Oh, it is. You think you're free? Girl, you just traded prisons. Miles's jaw tightened. Watch your mouth. Her father ignored him and leaned toward Clara, breath sour but words sharp. You brought shame on this family. And you'll bring death on yourself. Miles stepped forward hard, boots cracking on the wood. Leave. Her father flinched, just barely, then spat in the dirt and walked away without another word. Clara watched his figure shrink down the long road. Don't listen to him, Miles murmured. I'm not, Clara said. But part of her was. The sheriff arrives. 3 days pass like walking on cracked glass, quiet, dangerous, ready to break. Then the sheriff's horse appeared at the gate. Clara and Miles stepped out together, side by side. The sheriff dismounted slowly. Miles, we need to talk. No, Miles said. We ain't hidin' anymore. Say it here. The sheriff sighed, weary. You pushin' the Turners has done something ugly.
Governor's men are stirring up again.
I came to give you a choice. Miles didn't move. What choice? Sheriff glanced at Clara, then back at Miles.
If you marry her, he said, voice low, they'll come harder. The Turners, the governor's boys, her father, you'll give them all one target.
Clara's fingers tightened around Miles's sleeve.
The sheriff continued.
But, if this is real between you two, if you stand together, maybe that's enough to stop 'em. Folks fight less when they're looking at a married pair. Miles studied the sheriff's lined face.
You tellin' me to marry her, he said flatly.
I'm telling you, the sheriff replied, that you're running out of ways to keep her safe.
Clara's breath hitched. Miles turned to her. His eyes had the same look he'd had when he stood alone in the lantern-lit yard, tired, determined, scared but steady.
She didn't look away.
The sheriff stepped back toward his horse.
Whatever you choose, choose fast.
He mounted, turned the reins, and rode off, dust drifting behind him like fading smoke.
The transition. Miles didn't speak for a long moment. Clara didn't either.
The valley wind carried dried grass against the steps. The sky darkened from copper to violet.
Finally, Miles exhaled. Clara, if Maureen me keeps them from talking you.
She cut him off with a whisper.
I don't want safety. Miles froze. I want you.
Something in him cracked open. He reached for her hand.
No hesitation. No fear. Only resolve.
Then we'll marry, he said softly. Clara nodded, eyes shining, not from fear this time.
You mean it?
Miles squeezed her hand once.
With my life.
The decision hung in the dusk like a vow already spoken. And in that moment, the wedding day began to rise on the horizon, quiet, tense, beautiful, waiting for them. The morning rose without ceremony, no music, no prayers, no crowd. Just the crunch of gravel beneath Clara's shoes as she stepped outside the bunkhouse, smoothing the front of her plain dress with trembling fingers. Miles stood by the old fence rail, adjusting the collar of the one clean shirt he owned. He looked like a man bracing for a gunfight, not a wedding. Clara walked toward him slowly. You ready? She asked.
Miles swallowed. I'm more nervous than I should be.
You're not alone, she said. He exhaled a shaky laugh, the kind he rarely let escape. Then he lifted his head toward the small gathering behind them, 3 ranch hands as witnesses and the sheriff quietly flipping open a warn book.
Let's do this, Miles murmured. The ceremony.
The sheriff stepped forward with a solemn nod.
We'll keep it short, he said. Figured you'd prefer it that way.
Miles and Clara stood facing each other, hands interlocked, hearts beating loud enough to drown the breeze. The sheriff began reading, but Clara barely heard the words. All she saw was Miles, steady, scarred, guarded, yet looking at her like she was the only safe thing left in a brutal world. Say your vow, the sheriff instructed.
Miles breathed deeply. I'll protect you, he said. Not loud. Not poetic. Just true. From whatever comes. From whoever comes. I swear it. Clara's throat tightened.
She squeezed his hand harder. My turn, she whispered.
Miles nodded.
I'll protect you back, she said. From the world, and from yourself when you forget you're worth saving.
A faint tremor crossed his jaw. He blinked hard.
The sheriff closed the book.
That's enough for me, he said. By the authority I still got, your husband and wife. Miles let out a breath like he'd been holding it for years.
Clara smiled, small, warm, steady.
Miles's hand tightened around hers, grounding himself in it. The father watches. Clara's gaze shifted toward the ridge.
Her father stood there alone, rigid, arms crossed, face carved from bitterness.
But he didn't move. Didn't shout. Didn't charge. He just watched. And for the first time, Clara didn't feel afraid of him. Not with Miles's hand in hers.
The sheriff noticed too, placing a deliberate hand on his holster. But the father simply turned away and disappeared behind the ridge without a word.
A symbolic ending to a life she no longer lived. The transition. The witnesses drifted off.
The sheriff tipped his hat and left them with a quiet blessing.
Miles glanced at Clara.
"You okay?" he asked. She stepped closer, touching his chest lightly.
"I'm more than okay." Miles nodded, eyes softening. "Let's go home," he said.
He opened the bunkhouse door for her, the same place where she first smiled at him, the same place where he stopped running, the same place where they chose each other. Hand in hand, they crossed the threshold together. Days passed with a strange, quiet stillness, as if the whole town had finally stopped holding its breath. Clara woke each morning expecting trouble, hoofbeats, shouts, gunfire, but none came. Instead, she found Miles sitting on the porch, sharpening a knife or cleaning the rifle, every movement calm in a way she'd never seen before. He watched the horizon like it used to hunt him, but now he didn't flinch. Something in him had settled. Not peace exactly, but a kind of steadiness earned through too much pain and one impossible choice that led him here. The sheriff rode by often, never saying much, just tipping his hat toward them both. Finally, one afternoon, he dismounted with a letter in hand. "Got word from the capital," he muttered.
Miles tensed. Clara stepped closer to him instinctively.
The sheriff held out the letter but didn't let go of it yet.
Governor's men were pulled back.
Some new mess in their own house.
Looks like they ain't chasing ghosts anymore. Looks like you're off their list. Miles stared at him, disbelief shadowing his face.
"You sure?" he asked quietly.
"Sure as they ever say anything."
The sheriff hesitated.
"They want distance. Drama makes them look weak." Clara touched Miles's arm. He didn't breathe for a moment, then finally nodded.
When the sheriff left, Miles stayed outside longer than usual, sitting on the steps with the letter beside him.
Clara joined him without a word.
"I don't know what to do with this," he said. She rested her head against his shoulder.
"Then don't do anything yet." Miles let out a long exhale, almost a laugh. "You make it sound simple."
"It is," she whispered. "For once, it really is." He turned his head slightly toward her, studying her face like he was afraid she might disappear. Clara felt the warmth of that gaze, how heavy it was with meaning he never said aloud. Later that evening, as the sun bled out behind the hills, she stepped out of the bunkhouse door and caught Miles watching her. His expression softened, almost startled. She tilted her head. "What?" she asked. He shook his head once. "That smile," he murmured.
"You know what it did?"
She felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Saved you," she teased. Miles stared at her, something deep breaking open in his eyes. "Saved us both," he said. Clara moved closer, brushing her fingers against his chest. "Funny," she said softly. "It was you who saved me." Miles gave a quiet hum of disagreement. "Maybe we saved each other." In town, whispers shifted into something else, not fear, not gossip, but respect. Some folks nodded at Clara when she passed. Others avoided Miles, but no one dared challenge him now. Her father kept his distance, drifting like a shadow that had lost its purpose. Clara saw him once near the ridge, staring toward the bunkhouse. But when she met his gaze, he lowered his head. He didn't speak. Didn't approach. Not anymore. She felt no triumph, only release, a final cut in a rope that tied her to a life made of fear and silence. Inside their small home, life rearranged itself into simple rituals. Clara cooked. Miles built shelves and patched holes. They talked more short, honest exchanges that made up for years of silence. At night, she lay with her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat beneath his scars. He held her carefully at first, like she might break, but she wasn't fragile anymore. With him, she'd learned to breathe differently, stronger. With her, he'd learned to stop running. Their futures still held shadows, but none of them felt impossible now. On the 7th morning after the wedding, Clara stepped outside barefoot, feeling the cool dirt beneath her feet. She turned toward the doorway, and Miles looked up from the table. She smiled, soft, bright, familiar. The same smile she'd given him the night he first saved her life. The same one that cracked open his guarded heart. Miles stood, walked toward her, and touched her cheek.
"There it is again," he said.
"What?" she asked quietly. The smile that changed everything.
She laughed under her breath. "It's just a smile."
Miles shook his head slowly.
"No. It's home."
And for the first time in both their lives, it truly was.